We are now recording. This is our next Zoom session. I don't know if it's 4 or 5, doesn't matter, but this is the Zoom session on where we finish OLC and WDRC, and we also launch into the topics of Bill and Till, and we'll talk about programmable hearing aids from there. So I will share screen here, if I can figure out and remember how to do that. Here we go. And we shall make that little box smaller, and we shall pop up this guy over here. And this is the notes for today. Summary, Bill, Till, programmable, multi-channel. In the old book of mine, 225 to 244. So if we take a read of this here, you can recall, of course, this is all, what do you call it, summary, history, nothing new here. Linear and output limiting are older types, close cousins. OLC, output limiting, was the first compression. WDRC was the new kid on the block. Previous linear hearing aid wearers would often say that WDRC was not loud enough for speech. Oh, I'm hearing a lot of crinkle and crunkle happening here. There we go, good stuff. And this is because with WDRC, gain is softest. Gain, as I should say, is greatest for soft inputs. We will look at this on a picture. I'll show you this in just a second. It already lessens for speech outputs or inputs. WDRC is best accepted if the client had not previously worn linear or output limiting compression. Now let's look at this a little bit in English here. Pull up this picture, and you can see this here. Look at what you're finding here. A clinical spectrum, in other words, of compression. These are the three types. You had linear on the left, OLC in the middle, and wide dynamic range compression on the right. Now, if you look at the left set of lines that I'm circling with my cursor here, think of those as inputs. Yellow being soft input, green and blue being average inputs, purple and red being loud inputs. And then look at the arrows. The black arrows are showing the gain taking place. And then the right set of lines I'm circling with my cursor here, that's the output. Okay, so input plus the arrows, gain, is the output. So here's what linear did. Linear took soft sounds and amplified it by whatever it was set to do. It took average sounds, let's say the blue, and average and amplified them by the same amount. You can see the length of the arrows is exactly the same. And then look at the red. It would amplify the red by as much as it did the average and the soft inputs, but peak clipping occurred. Look at the horizontal line. And these outputs were clipped. Hence, you had distortion. Now look at the middle set of bars. A close cousin to linear. See how the yellow here is once again amplified by whatever it is? And then look at how the blue, how that's amplified by the same amount, just like on the left, just like linear. And then the red is suddenly given less gain. Okay, so the brakes are slammed. Just like we said, the kid in his dad's car, up to the stop sign, slams on the brakes. So what you've got is a similar happening for soft inputs, the yellow, and blue, the average inputs. And the difference is no peak clipping is used to limit the MPO. The horizontal line is where things stopped, and the output is limited by compression instead of by peak clipping. Now look at the right, WDRC. Once again, like the other two, the yellow is lifted by whatever it is, the same amount, let's say in this case. But look at the blue. Already there's less gain being given. And look at the red. Already even less gain is given. And so the brakes are slowly put on here. Compression is already occurring for average inputs and for loud inputs. It's just a low degree of compression. But look at what the result is. As a result, a big dynamic range of inputs is shrunk nicely into a smaller dynamic range of inputs. That's why they called it wide dynamic range compression. I really like this picture. I didn't even make it up. Someone gave it to me years ago, and I thought that just makes such clearer sense. Instead of looking at input-output functions, we're just looking at the three types of processing in a different way, in a spectrum, so to speak, of compression. And once again, the key thing to note is that the left two are very similar for the yellow bars and the blue bars. I mean, they're very similar. The difference is what happens with the loud inputs. Okay, this left linear is using peak clipping to cut off the loud outputs, I should say. OLC is using compression, and a lot of it. WDRC is already changed from the left two, because for the average inputs, it's already giving less gain. So the compression is gradually and slowly put on. In summary, applying compression in analog hearing aids, as it was always done, and even in today's digital hearing aids. The blue is for mild to moderate hearing loss, and WDRC is used, input compression is used, TK adjustment, in other words, changing the gain for soft inputs. Okay, then you've got, for severe hearing loss, output limiting compression, and it's output limiting, and instead of using input compression, they're using output compression. In other words, the volume control changes the gain, but not the MPO. You set that as the clinician. Output limiting compression, high knee point, high ratio, slamming on the brakes once the output gets too much. And the adjustment is not the gain for soft sounds. On the contrary, it's the maximum power output that's set about 15 dB greater than the client's UCL. Output limiting compression seen on the left, WDRC seen on the right. This is old hat, old stuff, covered it, been there, got the t-shirt, okay? Once again, though, note the salient features. Output limiting, high knee point, and in English, this just means that it waits to go into compression until the inputs have increased to some degree. And then when it goes into compression, it really goes into compression. And as the inputs may increase by whatever dB, the outputs barely increase at all. It's kind of funny, the numbers get a little bit screwy here on this particular one. I'll just pull this guy up for a second. You can see that the numbers went a little bit haywire here. They should actually probably be and then go over to here and shrink them a bit and go over to here so that the numbers make more sense. Now 60 is laying directly underneath that knee point. Probably I should do the same thing here. Blip, blip. Blip, blip, there you go. Makes a little bit more sense. So now you can see that the knee points are sitting here. Okay, so this has a lower knee point, let's say at 40 dB input. Output limiting has a higher knee point. And remember what we said now, I think on 2 of your quizzes, 2 of them, the length of the line means nothing regarding the amount of the gain. Okay? It's moving this line left or right that changes the gain. The diagonal line to the left or right shows a gain change, but the length of the line doesn't have anything to do with the amount of gain, because here 0 in is 60 out, 20 in is 80 out, 40 in is 100 out, 60 in is 120 out. The differences are 60 for all of those numbers I just mentioned. So the length of the gain line has diddly to do with the amount of the gain. It's a question that I commonly ask, though, because a lot of people get mixed up about that. I don't know why, but anyway, but here we go. Here is an MPO adjustment on output limiting compression on the left, and you can raise, you, the clinician, are raising or lowering the maximum power output on the software to match the guy's UCL. Put it about 15 dB higher than the UCL. So this might be 110, maybe 115, 120, who knows, whatever. And here's a TK type of adjustment done on WDRC. Very different. I'm adjusting the gain, and look at how the gain lines, 3 of them, and whoops, 3 in this case, whatever, least, middle, maximum. And notice maximum gain is the, okay, is with the highest knee point here. but this is actually the least gain because I need, look at my lines here, I need a lot of input to give me this output. Whereas if I increase the gain for soft sounds, I need a lot less input to give me almost the same outputs. Okay? And that's the essential ability of reading input-output functions. But WDRC, the control or adjustment is gain for soft sounds to imitate the outer hair cells. Output limiting, the focus is on limiting the maximum power output. So you can think of the left as governing or controlling or dealing with the ceiling, and you can think of the right as governing or controlling or dealing with the floor. Very different approaches. The right is for mild to moderate sensory neural loss, where outer hair cells are the pathology, sensory neural loss. The left would be for severe hearing loss, where the damage is done both to outers and inner hair cells. If you look at this particular picture here, you've got the output limiting on the left, WDRC on the right, but now we're showing them as frequency responses. We're showing them as input outputs. This is now the more friendly way of looking at the differences between output limiting and WDRC. A little less abstract, a little less cerebral, a little less dealing with input-output functions. Okay, what you're looking at here. Let's take an example. On the left, output limiting. Let's just say that we don't even know what the gain is. Let's just leave, we're leaving the gain as X, whatever amount of gain, because you can change the gain on hearing aids anyway. But here's how output limiting would behave, in quotes. For inputs of 40, these numbers here on the right, 40, 60, and 80, represent inputs. For soft inputs, you're going to get some amount of gain. We'll call it the green. Okay? And then for average inputs like 60, we'll call it the blue, the frequency response. Notice you've got the lows on the left, mids on the middle, highs on the right. These are the frequency responses. They're fictitious frequency responses of a fictitious hearing aid invented in Ted's head. Okay? So you can see that the gain for soft and average inputs is similar. You got a similar frequency response. But now what happens with 80 dB inputs, wow, the gain suddenly went way down. Okay? Suddenly you had compression, and a lot of it. Now if we look at WDRC on the right, you have a very, very different behavior. Because here's your 40, 60, and 80 again. But WDRC for 40 dB inputs is giving me most gain. And for 60 dB inputs, now my gain is gradually reduced. And for 80 dB SPL inputs, my gain is further reduced. So instead of slamming on the brakes, once the car gets near the stop sign, the brakes are slowly applied way before the stop sign. Compression is already occurring with WDRC for mid inputs like 60. It's already being applied. And it's steadily being applied, let's say at a ratio of, say, 2 to 1. A low, weak compression ratio is being applied by WDRC as the inputs gradually increase. I will stop sharing screen here and ask if you have any questions about what you've just seen in these previous slides. This has all been, and trying to summarize it or tie it up like a bow and basically package it and ship it. Okay? But I'm showing you different pictures of output limiting and WDRC than purely input-output functions, just to give you an idea to summarize. How's that sitting? Make sense? Good. Good stuff. All right, we start sharing screen again. Und we this time look at our notes. Yeah, let's see. Escape here. All right, pull up the old notes and we'll see what we did. This is just all reading history of what we just talked about. Clinical uses of output limiting, severe to hearing loss, smaller dynamic range. You could also use it for conductive hearing loss, because conductive hearing loss needs a lot of power, because conductive hearing loss is a mechanical blockage of sound, okay, mechanical blockage. Conductive hearing losses aren't often fit with hearing aids, of course, because conductive hearing loss is medically treatable. However, in some cases where conductive hearing loss is not medically treatable, well, the person may wear hearing aids. Let's say, for example, otosclerosis. That is, the physician says, you know what, if I do surgery on that, I'm probably going to make it worse. I'm not going to mess with it, okay? Then the client may wear hearing aids, and if that conductive loss is, say, 50 dB, okay, you're going to have probably use more gain and more output for that particular person than you would for a sensory neural loss of 50 dB. And the reason why is because the blockage is conductive. It's mechanical. You actually need a little more power, and some software will ask you, is it conductive loss or is it sensory neural? Now, the fitting method called NAL actually asks for the type of loss to determine, and it builds that into the formula. Anyway, summary, applying compression, all history. We've read all of this. I talked to you about it in the pictures we just showed. Clinical uses of WDRC and its summary. Basically, all of this is just reading history. This is just reading exactly what we had said in this particular Zoom session since 11:30. So we are now at 11:50 in Central Time, and in Boise I would imagine it's 10:50, and here on the Pacific West Coast it's 9:50. Anyway, basically, if you look at the bottom where it's highlighted here, WDRC, its adjustment is a TK control adjustment, moderate power hearing aids, low knee point, low ratio, all of this is repetition. Some people say that with WDRC, speech isn't loud enough. Why would they say that? Read here with me. Because they're used to more linear gain for medium inputs. Some people say, oh, I can hear people at other tables louder than the person across from me. Now think about that kind of a complaint. I hear people at other tables in the restaurant better than I hear the person sitting across from me. Why would that be? Let's look at why that might happen. That might happen because output limiting hearing aids have a peak here. Output limiting hearing aids are giving way more gain for average inputs like speech. Okay? Here, WDRC is already reducing its gain for average inputs like speech. And people at other tables further away are softer than the person right across from you because they're further away. Well, look what WDRC is doing to tables further away. It's giving the maximum gain for soft sounds. You see what I'm saying? So what's interesting, and what we will learn in a couple of weeks from now, actually probably as early as next week, is with digital hearing aids, they have a solution for this. They actually resort back to linear gain for average inputs. It's a strange looking function there, and I could show it to you just to bug you, just like I did last week. And then it'll be WDRC, and then linear gain, and then output limiting. Check this out, just to bug you. I'll stop sharing. Here we go. I'll give you a neat point. Look at that. It has linear, then WDRC, and then a little bit of linear again, and then output limiting. Weird. They'll have 3 knee points. Yikes! Don't worry about it. You're not setting it. Software does that. Okay? But that's actually what happens in linear in some of these hearing aids.
So does the mics at all help with that? You know, they talk about directional mics and omni.
That helps. Yep. Those are solutions to deal with that as well. Yep, those also help. But in terms of compression, just sheerly compression, that's a compression solution to the problem. And that's a common complaint you as clinicians are going to encounter is, I hear people better at further tables further away and then the software will ask you if that's one of the comments or complaints, and if it is, it'll automatically adjust for you. You get
computers do most of the work for you, don't they?
They sure do. And you have to be careful, because if you let them do too much of the work for you, you end up getting a frontal lobotomy. And I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. Know what I mean? So it's kind of a weird thing that way. You have to, that's why it's so important to do real ear. Because if you let the software do the talking and the walking, we're in some trouble. The software is meant as a guide. It gets you into the ballpark. It gets you in, basically. You have to have the software. But don't completely worship and bow down to the holy mountain of the software, because the 2 tablets of stone are going to crack. You know what? The reality is in the real ear. And that's where OTC grads supersede a lot of clinicians out there. Share screen again. Okay, what else can I talk to you about here? Okay, we can now move further down, get onto page 2, and here we go. Scroll. Let's talk about 2 kids, 2 twins, Bill and Till. Bill came first. Till was born about a year later. Okay, they're brother and sisters. And what they mean is bass increase at low levels or treble increase at low levels. Bass increase at low levels, treble increase at low levels. In English, what does this mean? When you look at Bill and Till, basically, here you go. I'm going to let you see this whole screen here. This is Bill on the left. This is Till on the right. Remember the picture? Remember I showed you? Let's look at WDRC. Here's straight WDRC. Okay? Gain is greatest for soft inputs, less gain for middle inputs, less gain for loud inputs. Now keep kind of a mental shot of that. Now look at Bill and Till. Bill is just WDRC confined to the bass. In the treble, the gain is going to be the same for all inputs. In other words, the gain is linear for treble. Look at how the lines all meet at the treble. And whatever the gain is on the left, just call it X, whatever it is. And the numbers on top of the lines represent the inputs again. 40, soft input, 60, average input, 80, loud inputs. Bill hearing aids gave most bass and treble gain for soft inputs, but as the inputs got louder, the gain for the treble stayed the same. Didn't change, but the gain for the bass got less. And as the input increased now to 80, the gain for the treble stayed the same, but the gain for the bass decreased again, even more. Now that had a very intellectual thought or purpose, because people would say, background noise is mostly low frequency. High frequency consonants need to be heard. And lows mask highs better than highs mask lows. So we had better take El Toro, the bull, and bring that sucker down. Don't let the bull smash the China teacups. The China teacups are the high frequency consonants. We can't damage those. So we make sure the bull in the China shop is tamed. And the bull is low frequency, background noise. So as the inputs increase, let's decrease the gain for the lows so that you can hear the speech better. Made common sense to a lot of people. Oticon used Bill. As a hearing aid manufacturer, Oticon was big on Bill. Okay? Bill came out, I'm going to say, in the early 90s, soon after WDRC came out. So Bill was like a specific kind of application of WDRC. And in one of the first digital hearing aids was called the Oticon Digifocus, and it used Bill. It was so Bill was found on high-end analog hearing aids. And when did analog hearing aids end? 1996, 95, 96. And digital hearing aids came onto the scene in 1997. So that was the year that turned everything, and Oticon Digifocus was the second digital hearing aid to emerge, 1997. What was the first? Widex. A hearing aid company called Widex, and it was the Widex Senso. And the Widex Senso didn't use Bill. It just used straight WDRC. This is how things kind of work. But now let's look at till. What the heck is till? Well, that's the sister of bill. Till is treble increase in gain for low levels, just like bill is base increase for low levels. Okay, with till, the base gain didn't change as inputs changed. Till hearing aids had a treble emphasis because most hearing loss is more in the treble. Most hearing loss is sloping, mild to moderate. And there was a guy, his name was Mead, and he's still living. His name is Mead Killian. And you should write this name down if it ain't in your notes. I can't remember. Mead, M-E-A-D, Killian, K-I-L-L-O-N, Killian. He's a preacher's son, just like I am. He's older than me. He's in his early 80s. He's got a handlebar mustache. Crazy looking handlebar mustache. He's bald as a bowling ball, and he's tall. He's about 6.5 feet tall, and he wears jack leather boots. Crazy looking guy. And he sings in barbershop quartets. Everybody's different. Smart as a whip. PhD in audiology. He designed till hearing aids, and the first one designed was called the K-amp after Killian. K-amp. Letter K and then A-M-P. K-amp. That was done by Mead Killian. Let's look at what it did. If we share screen, it did till. He said, well, shoot, who cares about bill? I mean, yeah, I get the reasoning behind bill. That's all cool. I mean, I get where they're coming from. I know what they're doing. But let's face it, most people have high frequency hearing loss. And I'm going to make the compression work more to address high frequency hearing loss. What the hey? So for soft inputs like 40, I'm going to make most gain happen in the treble because that's where most hearing loss is. And then as the inputs increase to 60, I'm going to reduce the gain for the treble. I'm going to leave the gain for the bass at what it is because not much bass gain is happening anyway because most people don't have much hearing loss for bass. So who cares? And then for loud inputs like 80, I'm going to reduce the treble gain even more. And so till is simply WDRC confined to the treble frequencies. Bill is just WDRC confined to the bass frequencies. I guess straight WDRC could be called BillTill, both. I mean, you're having them happen both at the same time. Look at it. I mean, the gain is changing for the bass, and the gain is changing for the treble. Okay? Well, bill and till just kind of makes those things happen at specific frequencies. That's all. There's the reasoning behind bill. If you think of the reasoning behind bill, let's go back to bill for a second here on the left. Here's some of the reasoning. Upward spread of masking. I always wish this black bar would disappear at the top of the page. I'm never sure how to get rid of that, but you know what I mean. Upward spread of masking. Remember when you studied in anatomy class? Look at the yellow horizontal line. That is the basilar membrane of your cochlea. That's the floor upon which your hair cells all stand. You've unrolled the cochlea, so it's now 1 inch long. You've unrolled it, and you have the high frequencies here on the right, mid frequencies in the middle, low frequencies on the left. And look, a high frequency traveling wave exciting hair cells here, and a low frequency traveling wave exciting hair cells over here. Okay, notice how they're both shaped like kites. Look at the red, looks like a great big kite laying on its side. That means if I excite these hair cells, the front of the traveling wave is steep, but its tail is really long. High frequency traveling wave still is shaped like a kite. It's a shorter kite. But the thing to note here is this. If I make the rumbling of a truck outside, blah, 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 you got a truck rumbling away, and then in your kitchen, there's a bird cage and you got a little canary, and the little canary is going beep, 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 beep. Well, the rumbling of a truck, look at its traveling wave. It's going to overlap the soft peeping of a canary. So lows mask highs very easily. But it doesn't work the other way around. I can have Miss Harry Canary beep, 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 all she wants, and she can make a great big traveling wave, but guess what? It's confined to this area of the cochlea. It's not going out to mask the soft rumble of a truck outside. The truck outside may be softer now. It might be going blub, 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 blub. But Miss Harry Canary can peep till the cows come home. That high frequency sound is not going to involve the lows. So lows mask highs better than highs mask lows. And that's the reasoning behind Bill. Hey, most noises are low frequency. Background noise is mostly low frequency. And we got the bull of the low frequency background noise in the China teacup store. And we've got to stop the bull from smashing the high frequency teacups. So we're using Bill. That was the reasoning behind Bill. Reduce the upward spread of masking. Reduce background low frequency noise so it cannot mask the high frequency consonants, because lows mask highs better than highs mask lows. Well, let's look at the reasoning behind till. Here's till. And you also remember studying both in acoustics and in anatomy. I'll stop sharing here for just a second. Recall the resonance of the outer ear, the resonance of your ear canal. What is that resonance? It doesn't occur for lows. All of a sudden, around 1500 hertz, what's the peak resonance? 2700 hertz. Where does the resonance end? Around 4000 hertz. You get about 20 dB for free between 1 and 4000 hertz due to the resonance of this weird thing called your ear. So if I start sharing screen, look at the reasoning behind till. Look, they say for soft inputs, lots of treble gain. Oh, look at this. I drew 2700 hertz on here. See? Lots of high frequency gain for soft inputs, less high frequency gain for average inputs, and less high frequency gain for loud inputs. Wow, look at the gain of the hearing aid. It's looking an awful lot like the outer ear canal resonance that I drew in yellow. That means the hearing aid is being transparent, like a window. It's doing diddly for loud inputs, because at loud inputs, the listener has no trouble hearing. Remember, the dynamic range has gotten smaller for sensory neural loss. They need soft sounds amplified by a lot, average sounds amplified by less, and loud sounds amplified by little or nothing at all. So let's make the gain of the hearing aid match or look a lot like the outer ear canal resonance, unaided ear canal resonance. So now the gain of the hearing aid, this bottom 80 line, is almost matching or looks a lot like the outer ear canal resonance. So the hearing aid is acoustically transparent for loud inputs, because the guy doesn't need anything happening for loud inputs anyway. So there's all these sort of intellectual reasons for these things. Let me stop sharing and look at your notes for just a second here so that we can see what we've got regarding the notes. Okay? Let's see where Bill and Till are talking about here. So this is what we wrote about it. I showed you the slides. Now let's look at what we wrote about it. Bass increase at low levels, treble increase at low levels. Two types of WDRC. Like all WDRC, note how as intensity is increased, the gain goes down. The difference is that this only happens at some frequencies. Bill, it happens at the lows. Till, the compression happens at the highs. Okay? Some people called these intensity-dependent compression, that was WDRC. Some people called Bill and Till frequency-dependent compression. These are nicknames. And compare figure 510 to figure 59, and that was simply this over here, comparing this figure 59 in my textbook to figure 510. Okay, Bill and Till compared to WDRC on the right. This stuff is happening all across the frequencies with straight WDRC, and with Till WDRC, it's happening in the treble, and with Bill, it's happening in the bass. So this is just, now, interesting, when the Oticon first started using Bill, there was a big conference held as there is every year in audiology, and I think this was at a AAA convention, American Academy of Audiology. And someone said, I'll tell you what, if let's name this circuit. Let's not call it Bill. Let's give it a kind of a neat name. Let's give it a moniker. And someone looked at the circuit and went, geez, that looks like complicated. That looks like the skyline of Manhattan. Guess what? They called it the Manhattan circuit. So you had the K-amp using Till and the Manhattan circuit using Bill. Two different approaches, two different philosophies. This is a bit of hearing aid history, but what the hey, okay? Anyway, all of that. Now we're at Till. We covered Till as well. Here's your writing on that. There's your about K-amp written right there. So now I think it's time to address multi-channel and programmable hearing aids. It's just a slightly different topic. Let's kind of move on down, but it deals with Bill and Till. Here we go. I'm going to blow this picture up so you can see it better. This is found on all digital hearing aids today, and multi-channel is found on all digital hearing aids today. These are two separate concepts. Programmable is one thing, multi-channel is another thing. Let's look at programmable first. Here you have a hearing aid mic on the left. It changes sound into electricity. Then you have an amplifier. Amplifiers, by the way, are always drawn as triangles. On all electrical diagrams, amplifiers are triangles. I didn't make it up. Then you have a volume control in the circuit, and then you have your receiver or speaker. Okay, and here you have compression taking place. And look at the bottom. You'll have program 1, program 2. These are this means that you've got it. You've programmed the hearing aid on the software. I'll stop sharing. You've programmed the hearing aid on the software. Maybe you used Now. Maybe you used DSL. Maybe you used whatever fitting method you used. You binked into NOAA the guy's audiogram. You indicated whether it's conductive or sensory neural. You entered the guy's UCLs. Whatever you did, you chose your hearing aid company. Let's say it's Oticon or Bernafon or Unitron. Why they all end in on is beyond me, but anyway. You picked your hearing aid model, and then you said fit. And the software went, and you could see a frequency response. You could see what if you wanted to, you could see the input-output functions, but most people don't. You looked at what your MPO was. You thought if that was good. If not, you could adjust it, whatever. You look at that and go, okay, save. So you save that frequency response. So all the compression is going on behind the scenes. The hearing aid's set now. It's programmed. That's for listening in quiet. That's for listening one-on-one. That's for talking like at the supper table when there's not too much background noise going on. But you might have a listener walking outside where it's noisy. And maybe there's a lot of traffic outside. And you want to then use program 2 for listening in noise. And what's the hearing aid going to do then? Well, you will decide what you want it to do. And this happens on all digital hearing aids, all of them. The hearing, I'm going to just give you an idea. Here's here. Here's a 3-program hearing aid. So program 1 might be the solid line. Here's the gain you want according to the guy's hearing loss, according to the fitting method you chose. This is what the gain of the hearing aid according to program 1. Then you set another program for listening in noise, and we'll call that program 2. And look at program 2. Look what it does. Look what it does. Less gain for low frequencies, background noise, but more gain for high frequencies. So in a way, your gain is happening like a teeter-totter or a seesaw. It's less gain for lows, but more for highs. That's because you want to hear speech better. You want to hear the high-pitched consonants better in noise. So you're giving, program 2 is giving you a few more dB of gain in the highs and a little less gain for the lows. That's your listening and noise program. Let's make a third program, because most digital hearing aids today offer at least 3 to 4 programs, at least, okay? And you don't have to use them all. It depends on your client. Maybe your client's 89 years old and doesn't know how to turn on a hearing aid, so you're not going to mess with all these. But let's say your client is 65 and is still active and grandmother, grandfather, but active, goes fishing with the kids on the weekends and whatever. Okay. A third program might be music. Now think about music. Let's talk about music. When we studied this course and when we studied sounds, what's low frequency sounds? Mostly that's music. What's 125 on your audiogram? Low C on a piano. What's 250 on an audiogram? Middle C on a piano. What's high C? 500 hertz. All of those frequencies are on the low frequency half of the audiogram. So maybe the guy is a musician or loves listening to music, and you might say, hey, for music, for listening to music, let's give you more gain for the lows, because that's where most music is taking place. And we'll keep the gain the same for the highs. So the client with a handheld remote control can change the gain or the programs of the hearing aid. You set program 1 according to your fitting method and the audiogram. That's your base program. That's your program for fitting in one-on-one. And then listening in noise, you're altering the program. So you might go less gain for the lows, more gain for the highs. How much? That's your decision. Manufacturer software often guides you. You want an automatic listening to noise program? Okay, let us set that for you. Push the button, done. You might want to set it yourself, but usually the decibel values are around 5 or 6. You'll get about 5 dB more gain for the highs, about 5 dB less for the lows. Okay, store, that's program 2. You want to program 3 for listening on the telephone or listening to music or something like that? Let's say music, okay. Deliberately, about 5 to 10 dB more gain for the lows only. Save, program 3. Then the guy walks out with a remote control. Here, I'll use my rock from New Zealand. And the guy's got that remote control in his hand, and he can push program 1, program 2, program 3, and the hearing aids automatically go to that program. Hearing aids.
Do a lot of the hearing aids have the program button on them? Because I know my stepdad's, I know when he got them, it was the funniest thing. He told me, yeah, I have a casino setting, because he used to, they lived in Las Vegas. He had a casino setting. Is what loud background.
That's probably a listening and noise program, aptly named casino. But yeah, some hearing aids, the switch is actually, you can touch a button on the BTE. Yep.
Yeah, that's what he's got. Yeah.
And sometimes you've got both. They give you the option of having a remote control so that people don't see you doing this to your hearing aid. A lady in her purse can just put her hand in there and change programs. You know, it's more discreet.
Vanity, right?
And all of this happens wirelessly, of course. So that's programmability. That's one of the salient features of programmability is the client can change stored frequency responses. You set them, you're the clinician, but you've programmed the hearing aid, and now the client can toggle among the programs. Usually the maximum programs, usually people might have about 3 programs max. Nerds will want more, but usually people can't deal with that. Most people get mixed up about how to put the battery in the ding-dong hearing aid, so giving them too many notes, it's getting to be too complicated, if you know what I mean. Okay? Now, programmability had its beginnings. I mean, shoot, this is showing you an early analog programmable hearing aid. And here you're looking at a wire stuck a hole in the hearing aid. This came from a little handheld programmer. Look at this on the right, a little handheld programmer. So you didn't program the computer with your laptop or with your desktop computer with with manufacturer software on it. You had a little handheld programmer that was dedicated only for that task, you know, and you could program the guy's hearing aid. Oh yeah, you could make different outputs or different kind of gains for the lows. You know, you could play around with stuff and then store it, programmed. Essentially, if I go up here now, what do we got? Okay, now let's talk about multi-channel. Multi-channel. Multi-channel began with BillTill. It was a hearing aid that, okay, let's have the hearing aid provide till in the high frequency channel and bill in the low frequency channel. It's a 2-channel hearing aid. What's the advantage there? Well, looky, here comes Cookie. Big advantage. Look at, here's a frequency response on the left. If I've got bill happening here and I've got till happening here, man, I can adjust the hearing aid like crazy. I can fit any loss I want. I can get anything I want at Alice's restaurant. I mean, I can fit flat losses. I can fit reverse rising hearing losses. I can fit sloping hearing losses. I can even fit precipitous high frequency losses. How come? Because my hearing aid is like a letter H. Let me draw it. I've got a big letter H here. I've got bill happening here. I can raise or lower the gain for lows. I can raise or lower the gain for highs. And I can adjust where the 2 channels meet. So if the guy's loss dropped off at 500 hertz, I could make the bill channel really skinny and amplify only from 125 to 500. And then I could make the till channel really wide and amplify the heck out of the treble. Or if the guy's loss dropped off at 1,000, then I could make the bill channel and the till channel equally wide and let them do their things. Or if the guy's loss dropped off at 2,000, I could make the bill channel really wide and give very little gain there. And I could make the till channel really skinny and give buku gain happening here. You could get anything you want. So this was like super hyper adjustability. Everybody loved this. This was where analog hearing aids ended. Analog hearing aids, the era of analog hearing aid ended with the fact that they were programmable and they were 2-channel. Yeah, the world was really hyper. It was the early mid-90s, and people were thinking, boy, are hearing aids ever complicated. Wow, they're 2-channel. They've got bill and 1 channel.
Till and bill are basically just amplifiers then, because they're listed on your diagram as triangles.
Yes. Yeah, those hearing
amplifiers.
Yep, those hearing aids had 2 amps. Yep, isn't that weird? So you're thinking it's kind of like, and that's where analog hearing aids, the era ended, 1995, 96. Boy, are they complicated. Yeah, they got 2 channels, and they got bill happening here, till happening here, and I can adjust everything. I can adjust where the 2 channels meet. So let's just look at this guy here. Man, I can see here, that green vertical line? It happens to be maybe at 1,000 here, but I could move that green line over to here and provide a skinny bill channel and a wide till. Or I could move this green vertical line over to the right. So now my base bill would be really wide and my till would be really skinny. And I could have bill set way down and I could have the skinny till channel turned way up, and that would be good for noise-induced hearing loss that dropped off at 2K. You know, the hearing aids were very flexible then. We thought, ooh, are we ever cool? Wow. Well, 3 holes in the ground. I mean, here's this showing you a picture of that. They called that the frequency crossover, where the 2 channels meet. Okay? And the low frequency channel bill, high frequency channel till, you know what I mean. Now, another thing about these hearing aids is that they began to think about compression. Let's not adjust it from a knee point here, so that it's either linear and then compression. Let's make the knee point hinge from here. This was the beginning of 2 knee point input-output functions. You know the problem with sensory neural loss on the right. Here's normal loudness growth, going from 0 up to 100, and let's follow the diagonal 45-degree angle line. For normal hearing, 10 to 20 is soft. For normal hearing, 50 to 60 is comfortable, follow my cursor. And for normal hearing, 90 to 100 is too loud. For sensory neural loss, that's mild to moderate, we're looking at the red. Now 50 or 60 is soft, and yet 100 is too loud. So hearing aids have to amplify a lot in the soft sounds. Average sounds get less amplification. Loud sounds get less. That's WDRC. And here's how they made the knee points now. They made them work more like normal loudness growth. They made the knee points hinge from here instead of from here. That was a transition going to digital. Anyway, don't worry about that so much. Look at this slide here. This is one of our last slides, I believe, of this morning. Yes, it is. Today's digital hearing aids. Today. Look how many frickin' channels they'll have. Not 2. You might have 16. You might have 25. And each channel is a skinny little bar. And no longer is each channel an amplifier, as Tina mentioned about the 2-channel Bill and Till earlier. Those were analog. Today it's digital. In digital, you don't need a separate amplifier for each channel. So here's the channels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I guess, and then another 8 or 9. And look at how you can literally sculpt or shape the frequency response. This red is a fictitious frequency response of a multi-channel hearing aid. And look at how it matches what I did with these bars. I set these buttons to give most gain here, less over here, less over here, and yep. Now you can exquisitely sculpt the shape of a frequency response to match any hearing loss in the world. That's where we are today with today's digital hearing aids. Multi-channel, programmable. So it began with a talk or a consideration of Bill and Till that kind of led to, hey, let's not make a hearing aid only Bill or only Till. Let's make a hearing aid 2-channel, with the low channel being Bill and the high channel being Till. And now today, you can throw Bill and Till over, they can go play in the playground. We don't need them anymore. Today, Bill and Till have disappeared because hearing aids have more than 2 channels. They've got like 25. So Bill and Till are like yesterday's concern. We just provide WDRC in this channel, WDRC in this channel, da-da, da-da, da-da. And guess what? Output limiting can be applied in each of these channels. And digital noise reduction can be applied in each of these channels. And automatic feedback reduction will involve the high frequency channels. Directional microphones will be dealt with for each channel. It's quite the situation. There's lots. As we move on in this course, we'll talk about how compression is used in digital hearing aids. We'll talk about digital noise reduction for at least a unit. We'll talk about directional microphones in another unit. We'll talk about automatic feedback reduction in another unit. So we're going to be covering all, that's why this course is called Compression and Digital Features. We're nearing the end of compression in this course. We're now going to move on more toward digital features. And noise reduction is a big one. I mean, digital noise reduction is a major concern. It's touted and hyped by all the newspapers. People come in waving, I want the hearing aid with noise reduction. Well, they've all got digital noise reduction. I'll give you a little heads up, though. With digital noise reduction, when you reduce the gain for the low frequency or for speech or for noise, guess what? You throw out the gain for speech as well. If digital noise reduction is being used in these 4 channels, let's say, for example, well, then if I reduce the gain for the noise in those channels, I'm reducing the gain for speech in those channels too. Digital noise reduction tends to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's still comfortable. It's a comfort thing, and it makes the client feel a whole lot more comfortable than sitting there turning down the volume. The hearing aid automatically adjusts. So these are good things about it. Let's see. I should escape. Let's go and look at our notes here for a second, okay? Take a peek here and see our notes because we're nearing the end of this morning's Zoom session. So in the notes, I just showed you mainly slides, but if you read carefully, your notes describe all of these things. Here's something to consider. Programmable means that all adjustments were done by either a handheld unit or computer instead of by a tiny screwdriver. Analog hearing aids were adjusted with eyeglass screwdrivers, the little tiny screwdrivers that opticians use to tighten the ends of your glasses here. Okay, those little screws. Well, old analog hearing aids had those little screws. And that's how you adjusted the bill or the till or the gain for the bass and gain for the highs and MPO. All of those were adjusted by little tiny screws on the hearing aid. When programmable came out, you didn't need that anymore. Hearing aids were adjusted by what they called an electronic screwdriver. Okay? They were called digitally programmable. This was the end of the analog era. Programmable appeared a little bit earlier than multi-channel did. Programmable appeared in the late 80s. Multi-channel appeared in the mid-90s. They called programmable hearing aids a digital screwdriver. No need for manual eyeglass screwdrivers to turn potentiometers. Circle the word potentiometer. Potentiometer just is like a light dimmer in your living room. You can adjust the light. You could adjust the bass by turning it up or turning it down. Not a light switch going off or on. It's gradually more or gradually less. That's a potentiometer. That's what was adjusted by the tiny screwdrivers. Instead, you had one socket on the faceplate of the hearing aid for the cable to the computer. Okay? And that's what you've got today too. The cable going from your laptop or your desktop computer to the guy's hearing aids. And it's kind of maddening because the manufacturers all have different cables. So your clinic begins to look like a sadomasochism place. I mean, you got all these cords hanging there. You got some for Oticon, some for Bernafon, for Unitron. The clients are going to be looking at, what the heck are you going to do to me? Anyway, but those are the cables used to connect the hearing aid to your computer. Sometimes you can use Bluetooth. Okay? Programmable hearing aids could have one program or they could have more than one program. Usually they had more. Single memory, multi-memory, that's just single program or 2 or 3 programs. Client could toggle among the various programs. That's what we covered. Either by remote control or something on your watch or pen or handheld unit. And I talked about the 3 programs for adjusting things. Okay? Other uses for more than one program, have a look at this. Your program for listening in noise. And let's look at that program for listening in noise. Your program for listening in noise may not just involve less gain for the lows and more gain for the highs. Maybe your program for listening in noise turned on your directional mics at the same time. And it kicked in your digital noise reduction at the same time. So your program 1 had this frequency response, for example, and you had omnidirectional mics, regular, and no noise reduction. And when you go to program 2 for listening in noise, you've got a reduction of bass, a slight increase of treble, plus your hearing aids automatically went into directionality, and they're using digital noise reduction now. Maybe. It's all what you decided to do. Multi-channel hearing aids, how we finished this morning, there it is. Okay, multi-channel hearing aids. Basically, this just gives you a bit of a history. All of this stuff is what we covered. Don't worry about this steep 24 dB per octave between channels. That was just describing the world's first 2-channel hearing aid. Okay, and the world's first 2-channel hearing aid was a circuit made by a company called Genum Don't need, this is just for your info. 2-channel input WDRC. Had a frequency crossover to adjust where the channels meet. Gain of the lows, Bill. Gain of the highs, Till. TK adjustment because it was WDRC. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? And then today's hearing aids are all multi-channel. Okay? So, there we go. We've covered BillTill. We summarized clinical uses of output limiting versus WDRC. We launched into a discussion of early bill and till. We then covered programmability. We looked at multi-channel. And when you've got so many channels like this one here, you really don't need to talk about bill and till anymore, because it's not like you got 2 channels going da, da, da. Now you've got 10 fingers instead of 2. Okay? All right, so you've got lots more fine control. It almost looks like an equalizer. And that's essentially what hearing aids are, like equalizers in these people's cars, you know, or in equipment in the back of a bar when a band's playing, you'll see the soundboard or the sound control, and the guy has an equalizer. Okay, hearing aids are getting quite complicated that way, quite unique. Anyway, I will stop sharing.
Don't you think
Go ahead.
The future will be Bluetooth for all these? Don't you think eventually all the companies will go to Bluetooth? Because
yeah, I would think so. That gets rid of the cords and cables, because
and then people can use with their iPhones and their
well, they do. People do. People are using their hearing aids they pair the hearing aid with your phone.
Yeah, my neighbor told me he listens to his music through his hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very common. They call that streaming. And your TV, well, when you buy a pair of hearing aids, often a remote control thing for your television is included. So you can plug that into the back of your television, and other people in the room can have the volume set to where they want, but you will be getting the sound streamed by Bluetooth to your hearing aids. Not the sound from the TV, but inside the TV, you know, that you will get streamed, and it'll be aided by your hearing aids.
I need to tell my stepdad that one, because he turns the TV
all the companies offer it. All the companies offer it.
He's got Starkeys, so I would think.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Every company does it, so that you can listen to your TV custom. You're getting the sound customized through your hearing aids. You can pair it to your TV, pair the hearing aid to your phone, pair it to your iPod, iPad, anything. Hearing aids today will just about wake you up and make coffee for you in the morning. All right? They won't go to the bathroom for you, but they will do just about everything else. Anyway, on that silly note.
Question on the midterm. Is our final proctored, or is our midterm proctored?
I believe your final is what's proctored. Okay. I believe your final is what's proctored. Again, Lynn Royer would be the best person to ask, but if you ask me, I think it's a 90% chance your final is what's proctored, your midterm is not.
So one of the classes said it was like a lab.
That's correct. If your class is termed as a lab, okay, then you cannot have 2 proctored exams. Okay? Then you have to just have 1. And if we're going to proctor 1, let's be at the final, not the midterm.
Okay.
All right? Okay. Are we good?
I think so.
Good stuff. All right, I will stop.